Hello, friends and dear viewers. I welcome you all for this current session wherein we are going to know in detail about the ecological adaptations of epiphytes. The name itself indicates, dear friends, epiphytes are the plants which grow perched on other plants, that is, supporting plants. They use the supporting plants only as shelter and not for water or food supply. We all know, friends, we have some basics um, regarding the plants' relationships when they depend upon for food or water upon some other living organisms or plants. All these things we come across discussing about the mutualism, the commensalism, the symbiosis process, etc. Here, this is an exception. Here, the plants they are taking support. They're taking support, but not dependence for food or water supply. Right? These epiphytes are commonly seen in tropical rainforests, and examples maybe the orchids, the lianas, hanging mosses, and a well known, the familiar one, the money plant, which all of us know because we used to grow these plants in our houses or in our residential premises. Coming to the morphological adaptations, here, friends, root system is extensively developed, and these roots may be of two types. They are the clinging roots and aerial roots. Now, clinging roots fix the epiphytes firmly on the surface of the supporting objects. Clinging roots fix the epiphytes firmly on the surface of the supporting objects, whereas aerial roots, whereas aerial roots, these are green colored roots which may hang downwardly and absorb moisture from the atmosphere with the help of a spongy tissue called as velamen. So, friends, while dealing with the root modifications, we come across these clinging roots and aerial roots. The velamen is a tissue that is made up of sponge parenchyma, which helps in absorbing moisture from the atmosphere and helping the plant in performing photosynthesis because these aerial roots are green in color, right? So indirectly they are taking up the process of photosynthesis which should be done by the leaves or tender stems. Now, stem of some epiphytes are succulent and develop pseudo bulb or tuber. Friends, again, it's also a kind of stem modifications, that is a bulb or a tuber, And I think we need not go in detail discussing about what bulb or tuber means. Right. Generally, the leaves are lesser in number and maybe fleshy and leathery. Friends, you just observe leaves are lesser in number and maybe fleshy and leathery. These are the basic characteristics, being fleshy and leathery. And these characteristics they are generally helpful in checking or in controlling the rate of transpiration because the plant itself they are having a velamen type of tissue in order to absorb water from the atmosphere. So there is very limited scope in getting in acquiring water resource. So there is every necessity to check the rate of transpiration as there are limited sources for water. An interesting word, dear friends, here myrmecophily. Myrmecophily. This is a common occurrence in the epiphytic vegetation to prevent the predators. Myrmecophily is a common occurrence in the epiphytic vegetation to prevent the predators. Myrmecophily is a type of pollination. Myrmecophily is a type of pollination where bats used to help in the process of pollination, right? Next, the fruits and seeds are very small and usually dispersed by wind, insects, and birds. And birds. And coming to the anatomical adaptations. So, friends, as usual, multi-layered epidermis is present. Inner to the velamen tissue, the peculiar exodermis layer is present. And presence of thick cuticle and sunken stomata greatly reduces transpiration. Of course, friends, these characteristics we have observed while dealing with the anatomical adaptations of the xerophytes. Okay, think the anatomical adaptations are close with regard to the similarities of xerophytes. So, epiphytes as well as xerophytes are having some similarities, particularly in anatomy. Succulent epiphytes contain well developed parenchymatous cells to store water. This is a peculiarity, dear friends, in case of epiphytes. Particularly in the succulent epiphytes, they contain well developed parenchymatous cells to store water. And of course, friends, here I am giving a beautiful diagrammatic representation of a transverse section of an aerial root of orchid. And in this diagram, you can clearly observe the velamen tissue. Of course, parts like the multilayered epidermis, followed by velamen tissue, followed by a single layered exodermis and a large portion extended occupies cortex, and you find centrally located vascular bundles. I mean the steel, right? And the physiological adaptations, of course, here special absorption processes of water by velamen tissue is the physiological adaptation that is being taken up by the epiphytes. Friends, I think it's sufficient to deal with ecological adaptations of epiphytes. And it's time for us to move to halophytes. As if, friends, in my, I mean, one of my earlier discussion or in one of my earlier episode, I have defined what a halophyte means. In general terms, halophytes, friends, are the plants which grow in salt water conditions or in waters which are having salt. So, halophytes, these are special type of halophytic plants which grow on soils with higher concentration of salts. Examples are the rhizophora, the sonaricia, and Avicennia and Avicennia. Halophytes are usually found near the seashores and estuaries. Friends, you know estuaries, nothing but meanwhile dealing with zoology, we used to talk about this term estuary. You can find these estuaries in areas where the river waters come and join with the sea waters, right? The soils are physically wet. Soils are physically wet but physiologically dry. A very contrasting statement, dear friends. The soils are physically wet but physiologically they are dry. As plants cannot use salt water directly, they require filtration of salt using physiological processes. I repeat, dear friends, as the plants cannot use salt water directly, they require filtration of salt using physiological processes. This vegetation is also known as mangrove forest, and the plants are called mangroves. Friends, hope you all know well and you are all very well acquainted with the most famous place, that is the Sundarbans, located in the state of West Bengal in India, where we come across plenty of mangrove forests. And of course, you also find the examples like in the Rhizophora, etc., in good numbers in mangrove forests. Now, let us move on to the morphological adaptations, dear friends. The temperate halophytes are herbaceous, but the tropical halophytes are mostly bushy. Mean they're found in the form of bushes. Tropical halophytes are seen in the form of bushes, whereas temperate halophytes are herbaceous. Friends, repeatedly we are coming across with words like temperate and tropical. So don't get confused. Um, I request you to just imagine temperate regions are nothing but the cold regions, the countries or the areas which are located around 35 to 40 degrees latitudes, either in the northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. They can generally be called as temperate regions. And of course, the tropics. Maybe from above the equator to the subtropical regions, though they are called as tropics. They are called as tropics. Halophytes, which are growing in temperate regions, they are herbaceous, and halophytes growing in tropics are mostly the bushy plants. In addition to the normal roots, many stilt roots are developed. Friends, stilt roots are they are also called as prop roots earlier. The best example is the banyan tree, my dear friends. Best example is the banyan tree, and you can see it in the root modifications also, the stilt roots. A special type of negatively geotropic roots called nematophores. They are called as nematophores with nematodes with nematodes to get sufficient aeration are also present. So friends, while dealing with hydrophytes, we came across with parenchyma. Parenchyma is a kind of parenchyma which which carries number of air chambers that helps the plant in giving buoyancy. Buoyancy is nothing but the capacity to float, or to flow on the water surface. Likewise, nematophores with nematodes we are seeing here, it's a special type of negatively geotropic roots. They are nematophores. They contain nematodes. Particularly, they are supposed to absorb air or to take air. They help in taking up the air. They are called as breathing roots because of this capability, because of containing nematodes, which are helpful in carrying out the aeration process. So these roots they are called as the breathing roots. An example is Avicennia. Example is Avicennia, and of course, friends, I am giving a good diagrammatic representation here. And in this presentation, you can see the nematophores of mangrove plants. You can clearly see, or you can clearly witness the presence of nematophores, the nematodes, etc. Right. Presence of thick cuticle on the aerial parts of the plant body. An example can also be shown in the form of a diagram. Here we can take Salicornia as an example. We can take Salicornia, which is a succulent halophyte, And if you observe Here, there is a thick cuticle. There is a thick cuticle, and the leaves are thick, entire, succulent, and glossy. Some species are ephyllous. Of course, friends, the meaning itself shows ephyllous means without leaves. That is without leaves. Vivipary. Vivipary is the mode of seed germination which is found in halophytes. Friends, in these halophytes, we find vivipary mode of seed germination. And of course, I am giving a beautiful presentation for this vivipary germination. In this diagram, we can see the calyx, the fruit, the radicle, of course, the germinating, the hypocotyle, etc. The diagram gives a beautiful idea about vivipary germination. Friends, now let us move on to the anatomical adaptations. Here, epidermal cells of stem is heavy cutinized. Is heavy cutinized. Cutinized in sense, dear friends, cuticle is very much thick here, almost squarish, and are filled with oil and tannins. Star-shaped sclerites and H-shaped, I mean the alphabet H, the capital alphabet H-shaped, heavy, thickened spicules. Here, star-shaped sclerites and H-shaped, heavy, thickened spicules that provide mechanical strength to cortex. They are present in the stem. Star-shaped sclerites and H-shaped, heavy, thickened spicules are present. Of course, they are here to provide mechanical strength to cortex and present in the stem. Friends, basically these are weak stemmed. Of course, stem may be present or not present. Here, root system is very prominent. Root system is very prominent. And in these typical and peculiar conditions, here we are seeing the parts like star-shaped sclerites and H-shaped spicules. They are all here to provide mechanical strength to cortex, and that is the reason why they are present in the stem. Now, the leaves may be dorsiventral or isobilateral. One thing, dear friends, the leaves may be dorsiventral or isobilateral. Dorsiventral means, dear friends, say for example, if you take a leaf, and if the leaf which you have taken is clearly differentiated into two different planes or into two different surfaces. One is dorsal and the other one is the ventral surface. And if you find such kind of differentiation clearly, then you can call that leaf as the dorsiventral leaf. And in some instances, if there is no possibility for making clear differentiation like dorsal view or ventral view, and that leaf can better be called as a isobilateral leaf. Friends, as a botanist, I generally used to enlighten enlighten my viewers in general lines only. You just imagine. Generally, the dicot plants. Generally, the dicot plants have these dorsiventral leaves. Have dorsiventral leaves, and of course, the monocotyledons or monocotyledonous plants they have isobilateral leaves. Isobilateral leaves they are the long, slender-like leaves, and you can never differentiate these two surfaces, dorsal or ventral. Better examples for isobilateral leaves are sugarcane, the paddy, etc. And the plants like of course the leaves in the mango, the papaya, the guava, etc. They're all the dicots. They have this dorsiventral type of leaves. I think it's clear for you. So the leaves may be dorsiventral or isobilateral with salt secreting glands. Friends, a very beautiful thing here, my dear friends, because these plants, they are growing in salt water habitats. There is every necessary for those plants to have some kind of mechanism that helps out these plants in sending out the salt, So, in order to take up that kind of activity, they are equipped with salt secreting glands. Coming to the physiological adaptations. Now, high osmotic pressure exists in some plants. Osmotic pressure, friends, we all know very well the osmosis, of course, the diffusion, etc. Osmosis is nothing but the process of movement of the solvent from a lower concentration to the higher concentration. Of course, the diffusion also the reverse one, etc. As the plant itself, halophytes means they are growing in salt water, so they used to contain much salt content, and they should operate some process. So high osmotic pressure exists in some plants, and seeds germinate in the fruits of mother plant itself. So that is the reason why we have discussed about the vivipary. We have discussed about the vivipary. Vivipary is the mode of seed germination that is generally found in halophytes. I think it is clear. Seeds germinate in the fruits of mother plant itself. That is the speciality of these halophytes. So, friends, I think we have an exhaustive discussion regarding the ecological adaptations of the hydrophytes, the xerophytes, the mesophytes, the epiphytes, last, of course, the halophytes. I think, my dear friends, with this, we should conclude our episode. Hope you all enjoyed this session, and I'm very much thankful to you all. In my next episode, dear friends, we are going to deal with a beautiful and most interesting topic that is pedology. That is pedology, and that too exclusively we are going to discuss about the soil. Its nature and the formation processes. Of course, the weathering process, various forms of soil, etc. That could be most interesting episode, I think, my dear friends. Um, so I request you all to follow my next episode. Thank you, one and all.